Well, I have a question for my 50 Minutes of Fact listeners, and that is in regards to the activism in Europe, in particular in Greece. And my question is this: is today's Greek activism actually foretelling tomorrow's American equivalent? Now, our Skype telephone interview today is going to connect us with a particularly important source on this subject. With Janis Aktimon, who will be speaking with us from Athens, Greece. I first met Yah-Nis shortly after Occupy's own Zuccotti Park protest shocked me and my fellow Americans. They and I were still trying to sort out how an extremely effective and explosive populist movement could happen on our soil at that time. That this could happen in the Middle East, well, that's understandable. After all, they don't have a real democracy. That this could happen in Spain, France, England, might be explained by the fact that students were there acting up, to complain about education expenses, tuitions. And Greece, well, that was and still is a question mark for most of us in the U.S. I mean, here's the cradle of civilization. If anyone should be considered democratic, one would think it would be Greece. And yet, there was a spark that was somehow set off what is now a 3-year wave after wave series of sometimes violent strikes and protests. So with today's interview, I will do my best to not only invite our guest to explain to us what is happening in Greece, but to give us ample warning as to just what might be happening here in the U.S. So welcome to the show today, Yah-Nis.
Hello.
Hello there. How are you today?
Pretty fine. The weather is nice. Many things are going on here. Many things. Yeah, there was a big assembly about the formulation of, let's say, deep and strong network between different groups of people here that they acting against what is so-called in Europe new totalitarianism. It's been an assembly for 2 days now. This assembly was going on for 2 days now and worked fine. Many people came from all over the place. That's the thing. I mean, things going.
Well, you in particular as a free thinker, a writer, and a columnist for several underground magazines in Europe, you have a lot to do with what is called free spaces, autonomous zones, self-organizing principles, the meetings that you just talked about. You also participate in collectives such as Void Network, Free Space. Now, how in the world can you do all this, find time to do all this, and why?
Well, I think that the purpose of a person is to be in a harmonical union with the others, which means not just to celebrate the great glory and existence of itself and its ego, but also working with them, helping them, supporting them, and promoting the idea of self-organization of things and of collaboration in between us all. This is, I think this is the most important thing in life. That's what I feel. That's what my brothers and sisters feel also in the same way.
Well, I noticed that when
nature somehow works much more if there is interaction and collaboration instead if there is just fighting going on.
Well, it seems to me that you have a very good reason for collaborating and joining together, because I understand that there's a specter of fascism that's showing up in Greece, and we know that in the United States, when we throw that word around, it's just to be able to demean somebody as being a fascist, but this doesn't have the same meaning to us here as it has for the import in Greece and Europe, especially around the advent of what are called the Golden Dawn people. So could you educate us on that and why activism and collaboration is necessary to combat it?
Absolutely. And also you need to know that nowadays there are some certain office of this so-called political party in New York now, I mean of Golden Dawn, including American people, as far as I know, Greek Americans, I mean, which have the American, the U.S. nationality. it's not just fascism, Jerry. It's a very, very dangerous, racist and neo-Nazist group of people, these people. These people were having a very small percentage in the voting the past few years, but after the great crisis, collapsed everything, all the structure of the state in Greece, and also the structure of the state in many South European countries like Spain or Italy. These kind of groups started developing themselves and using hatred and racism just to promote themselves, their ideology, which is an extreme it's an extreme ideology, believes that there is only the superiority of white race, that we need to support only our nation against all the other nations, that all the different opinions have to be repressed, and even if they are openly speaking about that, of course, we are a party that it's inside the parliament now, they have 21 members of the parliament. They say that we are a party that belongs somehow to the parliament and believes in democracy, but truly speaking, the thing that these guys in Greece, in US or in any other place in the world would like to do would be to create a coup d'etat, as it is said, an attack against democracy and a destruction of the whole democratic system. It's a very dangerous thing, very dangerous thing. And it's true that sorry, but this is a very important subject. Okay. You need to know that these people, they are making attacks to emigrants and immigrants all over Greece. They started to have interconnections with radical, extreme right-wing groups all over Europe. For example, 2 members of the German far right-wing party came and meet them as journalists in the place of the Greek parliament, these people. They try to create a certain European and worldwide network that support the neo-Nazi thing and using as a coverage the idea that they are just a nationalist free movement and something like that. It's a very dangerous thing. You need to know that in the States. It's a very dangerous thing. Because now they created offices in Canada and US.
Well, it is dangerous, and by way of this show and others that I know that you're going to be on, we're going to get out the word on this. Now, to me, that smacks, obviously, of going back in time to Nazi Germany, to going back in time to fascist Italy. In the United States, we have our own forms of people who disguise themselves as being true Americans, but what they really are truly anti-democratic. Now,
Golden Dawn is doing the same thing. Golden Dawn is doing the same thing. They covering the sense that they are true Europeans and Greeks, but truly speaking, what they do is that they're creating bunches of people going in the night and stabbing people in the streets. Organized groups that sometimes are even having a kind of cover from police in Greece, from some certain. I'm not speaking of police in general, but from some certain parts of the Greek police, some certain parts of the Greek police covering their activities.
Isn't this what they call the new totalitarianism?
It is connected, but new totalitarianism is a far more bigger term. Let's say that the new totalitarianism has to do with a kind of dictatorship that the markets, global-wide, the financial the big financial centers, that they are not really based in one state, but they are an international network, a complex of let's say, organizations that supporting the way that the money is moving all over the world, combine all different activities under their own rules. Somehow, the new totalitarianism has to do with a creation of a planetary state that the people and the democratic elected people and the parliaments and the actions of the people cannot do anything to avoid their decisions.
Okay, let me stop you here. Let me stop here because I think I'm understanding now.
Hold on, just give me just 1 minute. And the way that the Golden Dawn is connected with this kind of things, like the new totalitarianism, is that they are expressing the more brutal, the more aggressive, the more let's say, holistic approach of what the new totalitarianism is.
Okay, Yah-Nis, I see that as being the jackboots that are on the streets that will enforce this new totalitarianism. And what you're telling me, if I understand it correctly, is that multinational corporations, the people with all the money, all the banks, the ones that want to have influence, have basically supporting this so-called nationalist movements in different areas in order to actually control every country in that fashion. Am I close?
Yes. This is exactly what I'm saying, Jerry.
Wow. Well, we have a lot of
work
ahead of us.
Future. It's not a bright future, but it's a future that they want us to accept.
Well, let me ask you about accepting the future. I know that right now there are large marches taking place in Portugal, which may be impressive because they're in the tens of thousands to us in America. But will they make any difference? Are they capable of stopping something from happening as bad as this?
I believe that if they're not capable of stopping something in Portugal, because the governments in Europe accepting this kind of marches, at least they are creating a basic ground of intercombination between the countries of the South and the movements of the South, that afterwards, after a few while, they can create something bigger and something more effective, something that can create their own democratic new approaches of the thing against the dictatorship of the markets.
Okay, so I understand that it's important for people to protest and to be out there, but I also understand that it's probably equally, if not more important, to have people like you as part of a large underground network of artists and writers to somehow or another educate the population to cause them to be more aware in a way that a simple march can't do. For example, here in the U.S., we're having an explosion of artistic expression in support of the Occupy movement. It ranges from music such as hip-hop, art, as in the magnificent posters that have been designed, films, the occupiers, documentaries. This is what's happening here. So what exactly is the underground countercultural movement in Europe like, and how is it expressing itself?
Actually, the counterculture movement in Europe is very much connected also with music and the other kinds of arts, and actually speaks about new pedagogical ways of approaching people and educating children and others. There is a strong network of free spaces, squads, radical groups, people who are creating new political ideas of how can people create assemblies and all that stuff. Greece, on that subject, is, let's say, the most important center in the whole European Union, because here are the biggest parts of the intellectuals and the radicals that somehow affecting the rest of these underground sections all over the other places. Also in US, as you mentioned before, there was a big countercultural movement in the 60s and 70s. And also at the end of 70s, there was this interaction with punk and the new ideas and all that stuff in music and the anti-authoritarian thing in US. Something like that also taking place here in Europe and in Greece especially, but in a very wide way, in a way that it was, let's say, in the 60s and early 70s. Many people and masses of people are doing strikes, are creating their own spaces, are occupying parks and creating free assemblies there. They're working together. They're working together in an anti-authoritarian and autonomous way and try to do their own thing, to create their own approach on life beyond the suppression of, let's say, the state and the governments that they are so much connected with the new totalitarianism, and on the other hand, against the fascist groups.
Well, that gives me hope. I'm sure it should translate the same.
It's really massive in Europe nowadays, especially in the south. In the north, it's not that big now. but in the south it's very big.
Well, one last question, Janis, and what we famously call 15 minutes of fact, which never, ever gives enough time for something that could take 15 hours.
Yeah.
But even so, one last question is this. When will you find yourself next in New York City, and will you be able to meet with fans and fellow travelers like me? So give me an idea of where and when so that we can welcome you here.
Well, I would say next, I intend to be on US on mid-April, I think, or late April at least. And I would be very happy to meet other people, fans or travelers, and discuss about interesting subjects, exchanging ideas. I think that it's nice if people meeting each other personally, not just through Skype and the new technologies, feeling the certain essence of how an existence can be, and exchanging attitudes. Mostly, it's very interesting. This interaction between our people, I think, is the most interesting thing that can be happening in this era. That traveling is so much easier than 100 years ago. Let's say.
Well, I'm going to throw my shoulder behind this and see if I can help that happen and get you the.
I would be glad to help you on anything you need.
Well, good. Jimmy. Well, this is Jerry Ashton, the 15 Minutes of Fact here on WGRNradio.com, thanking Janis Aktimon for his time, as well as thanking our listeners for stopping by to learn more about the power of social change movements, both here and around the world, especially the amazing people involved like Yah-Nis here. So, Yah-Nis, would you like to say anything last night?
Have more time, yes.
Yah-Nis?
Yes, and thank you very much, I'm saying, and I hope when we meet, we'll have much more time to discuss about all these different subjects in a more deeper way.
Looking forward to it. Jerry Ashton signing off for WGRNradio.com.